Hello and welcome to Make Your Own Brew HQ. This is our second video, but it's going to be our my third brew ever. So if you haven't seen the first video, you'll know that I've never brewed before. That's a lie today because now I've brewed twice, and this is going to be my third brew today. The first brew I did was a Vienna lager done as an ale. It came out excellent. I know in the end of that video I said we're going to show you the bottling process and everything like that. I felt it was just too much pressure on me to get the bottling right and to do it on camera. So we will be bottling either this brew or my next brew, and we will be putting that on camera. The second brew that I did was the English Brown Ale. I ended up kegging that. I actually went out and bought a kegerator and some kegging equipment. Wasn't that big of an investment. I got the kegerator on Craigslist, so if you look around, you can do this stuff pretty cheap. The reason I did it was because I bottled once and said, I never want to do that again. It took a lot of work. It was a long process, and it was a messy process. And not that I don't mind hard work for beer, but if there's an easier way, I'm always one to find that. So the second beer turned out even better than the first. The first beer, the Vienna lager done as an ale, came out a little low in alcohol content. The English Brown Ale came out right on target. It tasted great. All my friends and family loved it. In fact, the reason I picked the Vienna lager was because it was it's kind of like a Dos Equis. I was told by Dos Equis Amber. I was told by my brewmaster. The fact that it was just that it's a Vienna lager that's brewed in Mexico, and my parents love Dos Equis Amber. They had some of mine. They loved it, and then they went out and had a regular Dos Equis Amber, and they can't stand it anymore. So I guess the beer is good. Like I said, the second one was even better than the first. It came out of the keg great, and I loved it. Today we're going to be brewing a summer ale, and I'm going to be doing an addition to that. The summer ale, I'll read the description here. It says, pleasant citrus notes come from the bitter orange and lemon peel, fermented with premium Safala? Safale. I don't know. I can't pronounce half the stuff that goes with brewing. But it says US-05, dry yeast. This beer finishes clean with lingering flavors of citrus and spice, crisp and refreshing. And then my brewer recommended that I add a pound of honey at the very end before the end of the boil, just as I turn off the boil, before I chill it. So this ingredient pack came with liquid malt extract and dry malt extract. The liquid malt extract is a Pilsen Light, and that's 3.3 pounds of liquid malt extract. And then we have 2 pounds of dry, 1 pound of Pilsen Light dry, and then 1 pound of Bavarian wheat dry. And then there are three hop stages with this one. We've got a pound, that would be a really strong hoppy. It's a ½ ounce of Cascade bittering hops. And then for the flavoring hops, we have a ¼ ounce of Cascade flavoring hops, and then Cascade aroma hops, which it comes at the very end. And then, okay, so today we're going to be they only gave me 8 ounces of crushed carapalis, some kind of malt, crushed, that we're going to be steeping for 20 minutes. And I've got a new trick that I'll show you that I'm not going to be going over this time like I did before. And then, yeah, we also have a spice pack to add. And of course, as always, it came with yeast. I had to buy the honey separate. And then in here we have the caps and the sugaring and the stuff that we're going to be using for the bottling later on. If we end up bottling this one, I might just stick this one in the keg. I had 3 problems last time. I couldn't get my wort to a boil because I was on an electric stove, and if you read the post on my website, I realize now why, because I had a concaved bottom where the elements couldn't really touch the pot all the way around. So I had trouble with that. So to fix that, I got a turkey fryer cooker or burner. Threw that pot away, used my brew pot, and it's basically it's a propane burner that sits on a stand, and you'll see a picture of that. The other problem I had was the thermometer. The thermometer, I was having problems because not this thermometer, my old thermometer was a floating thermometer, and I had to drop it into the fermentation bucket, and I had to keep putting my hand in the hot pot to take a temperature of the pot, and it was just really a pain in the butt. So I got just a regular simple probe thermometer, long stem. It's not digital or anything fancy like that. It cost me 10 bucks. That's a really good solution, I think. It's worked out really well on the second boil. The other problem, the last problem that I had was the fact that I had to take a hydrometer reading after all the foam was in the top of the bucket and I couldn't get to it. So I bought myself what's called a wine thief or a beer thief. Simply you put your hydrometer in the thief and then you just simply put it into the bucket and you push down on this little release valve and it fills up to the level of your bucket and it keeps the beer in there and you pull it out and you can take your hydrometer reading. Great thing about this is that then, because you've never touched the beer and it's not contaminated whatsoever, you can just put it on the side of the fermenter. Beer drains back in there. You haven't wasted an ounce of beer. So we're going to start off with, I've already brought my water up to 165 degrees, and we're going to start with steeping the grains. This is my new brewing setup. It's an outside turkey fryer, just the base of it. I threw the aluminum pot that came with it away because I don't want beer touching my beer touching aluminum. Got my regular stainless steel brew kettle and then propane. So it's just a propane system and it works really well. And we're down to, I brought the boil up to, didn't bring it up to a boil, but I brought the water temperature up to about 170 degrees. I took the fire totally off. The recipe calls for steeping the grains at between 150 and 165 degrees. So we're at about 168 right now. I'm going to let it cool down just a little bit more, but the thing is it's only has to steep for 20 minutes and I'm not going to lose a full 15 degrees in 20 minutes. So I found it a lot easier to do it this way than a way a lot of people I've seen doing it, or where they're riding the heat, making sure the temperature doesn't go above 165 or below 150. I bring my my water, which is 2.5 gallons of spring water, by the way, just like last time, and I got the other 2.5 gallons chilling in the fridge back there. So I bring the temperature up to 165, 170 degrees. Let it start to cool off. As soon as it hits around 165 or so, I'm going to start the steep, start my timer, and then we will have, basically our tea for 20 minutes. So that's what we're going to do. All right, we're at 165 degrees, so I'm going to start my steep. I'm putting the grains in. I'm just going to wrap the muslin bag around the handle there so I don't lose it in the water like last time. Speaking of last time, I was really glad I was doing it outside because I had my first boil over. Wish you could have been there. It wasn't at the point where I thought. You're supposed to get. I've heard that you're most likely to get the boil over at when you add the hops. I actually got mine when I stepped away after adding the malt extracts. Got it all mixed in there. Brought it up to a rolling boil, went inside to get some stuff, came back out, and sticky candy all over the floor. So I'm really glad I was outside. Another reason that I've gone with the turkey fryer concept, rather than, I could have just gotten a different pot, a new pot, and gotten the water or the wort to boil on the electric stove that I have inside. But I couldn't imagine cleaning up that mess after that happened. Out here, it's really easy. I just grabbed a hose and sprayed down the deck. So we're going to let this go for 20 minutes and we'll be back. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes, getting close to the point where I need to take the grain bag out. Just a quick note. Apparently water can lose over 15 degrees in 20 minutes because I came out here at about the 10-minute mark and it was down to 152. So I put it on some more fire again and brought it back up to 160 and turned the fire off again, came back, and it is now at 158. So as long as you keep your eye on it, you can't just walk away from it. Apparently, you have to keep a little bit of an eye on it. But we're going to take the grain bag out now because it's been 20 minutes. I'm just going to put it in my strainer here and let gravity do its work. Again, we're not going to squeeze the grain bag at all. After this, we're going to bring it up to a rolling boil. And at that point, we will be adding our malt extracts, both liquid and dry. And yeah, so we're gonna let this drain, and I'm gonna put some more fire in this thing, and we're gonna go. So we've let this drain, just toss that away. I wanted to talk really quickly about the color of this. The two brews that I did before this, they were both a darker color. The Vienna Lager was much darker than I thought it was going to be, but it's a Vienna Lager, and but then the English Brown Ale was, of course, dark. So I don't know enough yet to know where our brews get the colors from. I know they probably take color from a lot of stuff, but when I put this grain bag in, it didn't immediately exude the dark color that I was expecting, and I was kind of concerned, but thinking on it now, of course, this is going to be a lighter colored beer. So, of course, all the ingredients are going to be lighter in color, and I think probably where the beer probably gets most of its color from has got to be the grains, because the malts, they're a white powder except for the liquid malt. And I've yet to open that up to see what color that is, but I'm going to think that a lot of the color that comes from beer is the grain. So this is encouraging me to do some more reading up on how to brew. So, all right, so we're going to next, we're bringing this up to a boil right now, and then I'll be adding my extracts. All right, so I have this up to a rolling boil now, so I'm going to take it off the heat completely so that I can add my extracts. I'm going to add the liquid extract first. I don't think there's any, you don't need to worry about what order you add these in. Again, I have yet to find out. Just like last time, I've had this in a hot water bath just to let it pour easier. And that is stickiest stuff on the planet. I've taken the heat off. All right, so I've added the liquid. Now I'm going to add the first pound. And I've learned just to pour that just right in, because if you hold that open bag over the steam for too long, it gets all clumpy inside the bag. And honestly, I can break it up in the pot when it gets clumpy. I can't break it up out of the bag, and I don't want to put the bag in my wort. And I think that's good enough to be able to add the second pound. This is the Bavarian wheat. First two extracts, both liquid and dried, were the Pilsen. This whole process is a lot simpler than maybe my first video made it look. I know there was some panic moments in my eyes on that one, but you know, that first beer, as many mistakes as I made, it came out really good. And I've learned from talking to my brewmaster that there's just a world of science behind all of this. You can do additions, you can make your own recipes and all this other stuff, and it's stuff I really want to get into, but I almost look at it as a barrier for people when they go into a place like that, and there's all these ingredients and all these different things, and you get a customer coming in there asking for a pound of this, a pound of that, give me 4 ounces of this hops, and it starts sounding just really complicated. These kits make it really easy, and the guys at my brew shop, it's like, yeah, this one I'm adding honey at the end, and that's not part of the recipe. He goes, it'll be good with this. So just with a little addition, you know, I'm making my own type of summer ale. So it's got a honey addition to it. So I just want to be clear that this is really easy. It's not rocket science. It's brewing, and not to take anything away from the people who know a lot about brewing and can make their own recipes, but don't let that scare you off from trying it yourself, because for very minimal investment, I've had so far 2 batches of really great beer, and I don't think I can mess this up all that badly. So as soon as I get this all mixed up, I'm going to put it on fire again, bring it to a rolling boil, and that's when I'll start my clock and add my first hops. So I brought it up to a rolling boil now, and I've seen the hot break. I'm going to add my first hops addition, keeping in mind that when I do, quite likely to start a boil over. All right, so I need to start my timer. And this is going to go for 40 minutes. And then we will be on to the next hops addition. The hops is always an aromatic addition. It's, I get the most enjoyment out of adding the hops. This particular hops, maybe it's because I'm outside, but it seems like last time when I was outside, I got a little bit more of a hops kick to it. We'll see as we go along. Again, that was just the bittering, so we will be adding 2 more hops additions. Plus I have a bunch of citrus stuff to add, plus the honey. So I think all in all, it's gonna be a really good smelling and tasting batch of beer. Okay, well, we've been at a rolling boil for about 40 minutes after our first addition of hops, the bittering hops, and going to add a second addition of flavoring hops. Add that at 40-minute mark. This is my first brew that has a spice pack addition, and this has bitter orange peel, 1 ounce and 1/4, and lemon peel, 1 ounce and 1/4. So we're going to stir that in here at the 40-minute mark as well. I've never been a real huge fan of adding, if you have to add lime to a beer to make it drinkable, I don't know necessarily it's a good beer. So I've never been really good. I've always been kind of I guess a snob when it comes to that. It's if you have to add fruit to make it drinkable. But this is a summer ale, and oh wow, the aroma of this coming off now is really kicked up. The hops and I can really smell the lemon and the orange. But as I was saying, I've never been a real big fan of beers with fruit in it, but this is, I think this is going to be a nice addition to this. And it is summer, and we still do have people coming over, and maybe they'll enjoy a nice, light, refreshing, fruitish flavored beer. And then we will also be adding the honey. And I don't know that I've ever had a beer that really had the taste of honey in it, so I'm looking forward to seeing what that tastes like too. The honey will be added next. This is needs to go on for another 15 minutes. Okay, so my brewer recommended adding honey at the end of the boil. His exact instructions were to add it the last 5 minutes of the boil. This doesn't boil the last 5 minutes, it just sits for the last 5 minutes, so I'm going to add it now with about 2.5 minutes still left. This is a local honey, it's Mountaintop Honey Company, and this is Desert Wildflower. So I've soaked this in water as well so that it will, hot water, so it'll pour good. At this point, I really don't have any concerns about this brew. Everything has gone really well. I have some questions about the honey because it wasn't in the recipe. It was an addition from my brewmaster, and his instructions were, you know, added at the last 5 minutes of the boil. But I don't know if it's important adding it at the last 5 minutes of boil. I don't know if it needs to boil. So like I said, I added it with about 2.5 minutes left of the boil, because at 55 minutes I turn the fire off and I add the last hops addition. So we got about 10 seconds until I turn the fire off. And I like to be as precise as possible, but I don't know how important that is either. If I want an extra 5 minutes, would it matter? So that's that. Turn the fire off. Gotta say, this is the chunkiest beer I've ever made. So the last hops are in. We're gonna let this, I'm gonna stir that in real good. My sink's not quite deep enough, or it's not as deep as I would like it to be to get ice all the way up around the edges of it. But it is enough to sink about 3 inches of the pot in there, and it hasn't had any trouble in the past of getting the temperature down quickly. Again, our goal is to get the wort down to a temperature of 170 degrees, and then we'll get it the rest of the way with adding the cold water to it. And we are right now at 190, and that's dropped from 200 degrees just when I put it in here. It was at 200 degrees. So we're at 190, so I got about 20 degrees to go. So I'm going to keep an eye on the temperature and the ice here, and I'm going to get my fermentation bucket ready. I've already put the sanitizer in here. I've gone through all the cleaning steps already of all my equipment that's going to touch the wort at this point on. So we've dropped below 170 degrees. So I'm going to now carefully take this and pour it into the fermenter. And again, I'm going to go kind of slow so as not to take the trub, it's spelled T-R-U-B, from the bottom of the brew pot. And that is what I'm trying to avoid putting in the beer at this point. So we've done that, and now we're going to add 2.5 to 3 gallons, or however many gallons of cold water it's going to take to bring that up to a 5-gallon. And again, you want to pour this from shoulder height, because we're doing 3 things. We're bringing it up to 5 gallons. We're using the water, the cold water, to bring the temperature down even further. And we're using the height of the water to help aerate the wort. So it looks like we're going to have to add more than 3 gallons. Because we had a really good boil this time, so a lot of the liquid boiled away. When I'm making 5 gallons of beer, I always get 6 gallons of water. Because you're going to lose some in the boil off. You know, never having had this recipe before, I'm really looking forward to it. And the investment is so slight that even if you don't particularly care for it, I'm pretty sure your friends would. So I encourage you to try different recipes. Try something you haven't tried before. All right, so I've cooled the wort down to 74 degrees, and then I pitched the yeast. At that point, it's become beer. And now it just needs to ferment for about 8 to 10 days, and we will see how this batch turns out. And I hope you'll join us for a tasting. So we'll see you soon.